Hello and welcome to Bunny Hop. My name is George Weedman and I have with me Mike Bithell, creator of Thomas Was Alone. How are you doing today, Mike Bithell?
I'm doing good. I've been. I don't really understand what's happened the last few days. I've had a series of exciting adventures.
VR, monetization, China.
China happened. I think China predates this week. I'm pretty sure I saw a film called Mulan as a kid, and that was China in that, and that was in the 90s. So China's existed a while.
Yeah, there's a lot of Chinese companies marketing monetized mobile content.
Yes,
but anyways,
there is, but that's okay. They do what they do. It's been cool. What have I done? I've been talking to loads of journalists and people, which is nice. I've been meeting like heroic game devs I've loved forever. What else have I done? I went to Double Fine. That was fun. It was a childhood dream come true. So it's all been pretty cool.
So did you get to meet Tim Schafer?
I did not. He was not in the office.
Oh.
I don't know if that was intentional. I don't know if he was actually actively avoiding me, but
I'm sure he's a busy guy.
He's probably a busy guy.
Probably a really busy guy. But anyways, so Thomas Was Alone did fairly successfully. You sold over 700 million copies. Or 700,000, I mean.
Yeah, 700 million would be... I'd have a better shirt on if I'd sold 700 million copies.
Your voice actor was, he won a BAFTA for it.
He did,
But it's still like a very simplistic game about squares. Were you expecting, or quadrilaterals to be literal, were you expecting a game like that to get that much exposure and success?
No, not at all. Which was cool. I don't think I guess idiots assume that they'll be massively successful with a game about rectangles. I didn't see it coming. I didn't see it coming at all. I made the game I wanted to make, and I had limited resources. I had no money. I had a day job, so it was kind of evenings and weekends toiling away. I hoped that maybe I'd get a nice holiday out of it. Like that was the plan. Was like, I'm going to go to Disney World. It was genuinely Disney World. I'm not just being silly. That was actually the objective. Was I want to go to Florida.
700,000 copies later.
I could live at Disney World at this point.
Wow.
I could live at Disney World. It's just dawned on me. I could live at Disney World. That would be. I mean, I imagine after a certain amount of time, it would become slightly uncomfortable living at Disney World. But I could try it for like a year, see how it goes.
I do want to encourage healthy spending, and also wanted to ask if you also expected your own personality to branch off of that as well. Like I noticed, it begins. Thomas Was Alone begins kind of unconventionally when you boot it up, and it actually starts with your Twitter @ name on it.
That's the best business decision I ever made.
Yes.
It does. So, the main reason was because I like video games have splash screens, I guess, and I just was like, I should have
a corporate or a company. It was.
Well, I didn't have a company. Like it was kind of I needed to just put myself up there, and I was like, okay, I'll put my name, Mike Bithell. Well, I need to have something else. I guess I'll put my Twitter handle on there. And it kind of blew up.
How does it feel to be like in the spotlight as a indie developer who has that much more attention than what you did maybe just a week before release?
Well, it's strange. I mean, it did grow quite slowly because the game. I mean, Thomas has been out 2 years now, and most people only started playing it about a year ago. So it was kind of a slow build-up. So it wasn't like an overnight kind of, oh my goodness, I'm internet famous. I'm still not, but like I've got enough of an audience now that it's kind of strange. It's weird. It changes the way you talk. I mean, I use Twitter in the same way as I guess most people use Twitter, which was it was just somewhere to moan about like waiting for a bus or just kind of to post a funny video I saw on YouTube. And suddenly it became like I was a public spokesperson, and it's a weird thing. I've tried to kind of keep being an idiot and keep having fun with it like I would just with any social network. But yeah, Twitter's become strange. I'm very visible in a way that is horrible some days if people decide to be mean, but actually most of the time it's awesome. People are great, and I get to kind of support things that I like and kind of talk about things that I want to kind of, cool indie games that I want to get promoted and cool stuff that I think is interesting.
I think a lot of people might not really understand how important people on Twitter kind of end up inadvertently taking the role of promoters for other people on Twitter. Like, I mean, you yourself have talked about Bunny Hop videos on Twitter before, which did correlate with the traffic spike. And, other people on Twitter, when they do talk about videos, it ends up bringing in a bunch of new viewers as well. And
Was that the one where I said how much I hated them? Was that the...
No.
No, I was nice. I was nice. Okay, I was good.
If you did deep inside, then you didn't make it look like
No,
it.
I love your videos, man. This is going to be a very interesting video if I just tell you how clever you are. But I love your stuff. I think it's very interesting. Your Metal Gear Solid ones in particular actually massively impacted volume. Seriously.
Wow.
Seriously, there's like two or three kind of nuggets in there. I mean, it was a very long video, so like that's not a great hit rate. But there's some good stuff in there, man. It's really helped me, so I appreciate that.
And again, one of the questions I was actually going to ask was if the storyline of Metal Gear Solid was an inspiration behind Volume. You have talked about the gameplay of it before, and from trailers and also some release art, we can see that they do look very similar. But for Volume, we see actual like humanoid characters, and there's concept art of other human characters too, which is comparatively, compared to the Quadrilaterals and Thomas Was Alone, is a radically different change. And how do you think you're going to adapt your style to characters that are that different from where you've set the standard before?
So I don't think anyone played Thomas because it was rectangles. I don't think anyone anyone connected with those characters because they were rectangles. I think the accidental success of Thomas Was Alone was that they were characters, and that voiceover and the writing as well, hopefully, kind of made them more than that in people's minds. So I'm not that worried because I think what you put on screen helps to inform how you hear that, and I'm still very much focusing on the voice acting and the kind of the vocal performance, because that's something that's really interesting. It's something that a lot of indie games don't bother with or don't have really time to invest much time. But actors are awesome, and they can bring such energy and performance and kind of emotional core to stuff. So my hope is that people kind of go with it. Loxley is the main character, and obviously he's presented as this kind of 3D dude running around, and you have that thing. But there are a lot of non-corporeal characters. The enemy is a voiceover that you hear intermittently. Danny Wallace is back as he's the AI of the Volume. He's kind of so he's there kind of offering advice and opinions and all this kind of stuff. And he's never seen. He's not a physical person. He is an AI. He's an advanced AI. So it's hopefully people will kind of go with it. I hope if the characters are good enough, I'm hoping they'll go with it.
So are you actually having the characters talk this time, or is it still all narrated?
It's actually dialogue, talking.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm pushing myself to the next level. I could have done the narration thing again, but it kind of felt like I really wanted this to feel like a different game. That's why it's not a platformer again. That's why it's got a different art style. That's why, so in lots of ways, I actively wanted to make something different to Thomas Was Alone, because I don't want to be the guy who does the one thing. Because there's lots of guys who get pigeonholed into that kind of way of doing things. And I kind of want each game to surprise people and be a completely like, why is he, what? He does what? I kind of want that initial reaction. As long as they're not saying that when the game itself comes out, I'll be happy.
Yeah. And they do look very different, but there are recurring thematic elements like AI, and also, I guess one thing that I kind of noticed, and I don't know how much of a stretch this is, but is geometric simplicity. And like you cite Metal Gear Solid as one of your major inspirations, and when you look at the little radar in the corner of the screen of Metal Gear Solid, it deconstructs the game down into very harsh angles, almost rectangles with vision cones moving around. Was the geometric simplicity of Metal Gear Solid an inspiration for Volume?
That's interesting. I'd go back an earlier step. So the interesting thing about Metal Gear Solid, especially, well, definitely the first one, to a lesser extent, number 2, was the mode of design, the Lego brick approach that Kojima kind of famously designed all those levels in Lego. And you actually see it in the space, so kind of the height of things, the distances. There is a geometric beauty to Metal Gear Solid levels that's kind of, it's hidden behind this layer of kind of the awesome industrial warehouse of that game.
And then it also like presents it right in front of your face.
Right there in the radar.
The very simple robotic rules of this system are in front of you all the time.
And I love that. And that was, stealth moved into ambiguity and unexpected outcomes in a way that I wasn't as keen on. I liked those real predictable systems and the simplicity of geometry and that kind of stuff. So yeah, for me I just remembered playing Metal Gear Solid in the radar. I remembered as a kid just playing it in that little screen and basically playing Pac-Man in the bottom right while all this cool stuff was going on over here, but I was just playing the radar. and that was a big part of Volume. Was, well, what if the game's the radar? And it is. It's a simulation of reality. I'm not presenting this as a real space. It is, I guess, the radar from Metal Gear Solid made a game in itself. But yeah, geometry appeals to me. Simplistic minimalism appeals to me. I have a background in graphic design, so I'm kind of obsessed with right angles and layouts and all this kind of stuff in a way that's not completely healthy. But also the other more cynical side of it is it's a cheaper way of making games. You know, if I were to make a photorealistic stealth game set in warehouses and businesses and buildings and stately homes, which is what the environments you're doing are simulations of, then that'll cost a lot more money. So actually it's about also choosing an aesthetic and choosing a way of making games that suits the money in my bank account. You know, in much the same way I always compare it to independent filmmaking, so stuff like Clerks, where it's by Kevin Smith, where he actively went, okay, so I work in a shop. If I can just have a scene at the start of the movie that explains why the shutters are down, because it was all filmed at night while it was closed, then I've got a movie, I've got a set here. And you use what you have and you work out how to create something within those constraints. And that's what Volume is. Volume is me going, okay, so I love stealth games, I love simplicity, I love the kind of predictability, clockwork and systems of Metal Gear Solid. Okay, how do I make that for X amount of X dollars that I have in the bank from Thomas? How does that happen? And I think I've got the solution. We'll see.
Do you think that modern stealth games have kind of lost an element of artificiality to the rules of stealth that make the gameplay work in a way that might have worked better for older, more archaic stealth games like Metal Gear Solid?
Mm-hmm. I don't think it's necessary. I wouldn't put a value judgment on it. I think that's definitely happened. Yeah, I think it's definitely. I think the fashion. You have to look back at 90. Was it 96 or 98? Metal Gear Solid came out.
I think it was 98 in the USA. I don't know.
Okay, so it was 98, I think,
Europe,
and Thief came out the same year. And to me, I look at that as a historical moment of kind of. Is that right? Yeah, you're confirming the date. So I look at that as Thief and Metal Gear, and the world went with Thief. You know, maybe not literally in kind of that first person thing, but Thief represented an ambiguity and a messiness and a scariness through lack of awareness in a lot of ways. And we saw Thief lead to Splinter Cell, lead to all that path. And even Metal Gear now we see kind of curving back into, you know, the new Metal Gear Solid looks like it plays. I've not actually had a chance to play it yet. It's waiting for me at home. Looks like it plays a lot more like Splinter Cell.
Yeah, they took away the radar in number 3 and it's just been kind of... The camera's been getting lower. And
honestly, like that's, for me, Metal Gear hit its peak at 2. I loved 2 for a lot of reasons. I think there were problems, obviously, but I loved that game. And it's come around, and I think that my game almost sits in an alternate reality where we didn't go down the ambiguous close-up camera. That's the other thing, you're right to point out, the camera's zoomed in. Mainly, I guess, because the artwork of the characters have got better in games, but to the extent that now you have a lot of modern stealth games actively adding modes to give you back the awareness that you had from the top down. So things like Splinter Cell's tagging of people in the most recent Splinter Cell games, and Last of Us, where you've got the see-through walls, echolocation stuff. These are all mechanics used because the camera is so close, you've got no awareness of your environment. So actually going back to that and going back to stealth and realizing why things were done that way, especially with Volume because it's non-violent, if I'm not going to give the player the ability to kill an enemy, I have to empower them somehow, and information is the way to do that. And cleanness and brevity of visual information is my approach to doing that. Well, again, we'll see how successful it is, but it's been very interesting in play tests that people get it really quickly, which is exactly what I want.
Do you see stealth games as kind of an offshoot of puzzle games?
They absolutely are. I mean, they are. I've said in the past in interviews, and I don't think I coined it as a view, but it's basically, to me, stealth is they're puzzle games that have been reskinned with action game looks to sell them to people who like looking cool. There's the one place I think puzzle games and stealth separate is through the complexity of outcomes. So in most puzzle games, with a lot of exceptions, but with most puzzle games, you're looking at very simple interactions, very simple activities, and the agency is on the player. So things are driven by the player. There might be a randomness in terms of, which card comes up next in threes, but when you play threes, you are ultimately driving that process. Whereas with a stealth game, because of AI primarily, because we have these very complex scenarios that can come out of very simple rule sets in a way that's much more extreme than in your average much more extreme than Thomas Was Alone, for example. And that's really exciting, and it's been a fun process kind of designing levels for Volume, because I've realized that I have to design less, because the levels, the stuff that makes the game interesting is actually the interaction with enemies, is actually the AIs, the unexpected outcomes of, I made that noise over there, but I was aiming for like a pixel to the left, but that means that guy's gone wrong and he's going over there to get his buddy, and you have these crazy things that Thomas Was Alone was a game where you basically just had to go through the motions of working out the clever idea I had in my head. That was basically, and that's a lot of puzzle games, especially a lot of indie puzzle platformers. You're decoding what the designer had in mind. And what's been really fun about Volume is that I'm realizing that actually I'm just laying seeds for a scenario, and there is no right answer to any level.
A more emergent experience where the player might rely on themselves to crack the puzzle,
which is going really well, and I'm really proud of what the game's becoming through that.
And one thing, I think you were looking at user-generated content for Volume as well. Mm-hmm. And that was something that you haven't included for Thomas Was Alone. I was wondering what the decision-making process for including that feature entailed for one game as opposed to the other.
So with Thomas Was Alone, I was learning how to code making Thomas Was Alone. So actually, it's funny because obviously we've done ports, and it's been a fun process of handing over the files, because the folder on my computer that holds all the Thomas Was Alone files is called Teaching Myself Unity.
That's what it's called on the.
It's a tutorial that got out of hand, basically. I was like, okay, I'm gonna just try and make a little platformer, and okay. And it just turned into this massive thing. But so that led to some really interesting stuff in terms of, it's really badly made in a lot of ways under the hood. I can get away with it because it's rectangles, so it doesn't take a performance hit, but it does mean that things like level editors wouldn't work, because in many cases, if you were to move a piece of geometry slightly to the left, it would break the entire game. So I couldn't go back and add an editor to it, and it was outside of the scope of the initial game, because it was a very small scale game, made very quick, made over 2 years, but with very little time. With Volume, there were a few things played into it. One was just how many people wanted a Thomas Was Alone level editor. I kind of realised that there was an audience who wanted more from that game, and more than I could give them.
It seems like it would be designed fairly modularly. Like the systems seem, from my point of view, at least as a player, like they could be adapted to a whole bunch of different levels. And
with Thomas Was Alone,
right?
I'd like to go back at some point, and if I ever do a Thomas Was Alone sequel, then that's definitely a big part of it for me.
One thing I've always wondered actually is just how different the Thomas Was Alone final looks from what you might have designed as prototypes earlier. And like you were talking about how you had a folder called Teaching Myself Unity that had a lot of Thomas inside of it. And since it is only rectangles, I'm just wondering how drastically different could the final product of a game that is just rectangles look from prototypes?
Obviously that didn't change a great deal. I think the original Flash prototypes are online. I've deleted every copy of it I can find, but you can still find it. There's enough people copied and pasted it, so it's on the internet to find. And you can see that it was a game that was about, a red rectangle and a tall yellow character and an orange square. But what's not there is a lot of the kind of the finesse of like how big are these characters in relation to each other, that it's aesthetically pleasing, and also that it's gameplay correct. Things like, lots of like things like water effects, for what they weren't great water effects, but they were there. The shadow system that's in there. There were a bunch of little jobs and little things that kind of elevated. What really, honestly, with the process with Thomas Was Alone was one of trying to pull past the prototype and then realizing to go back. So there were stages into Thomas Was Alone's development where I was like, okay, so they're going to be like astronauts in suits, and the suits are rectangles, and you're going to be able to see like little faces peeking out and stuff. Or
was that just like too much for the style?
Everything I added took it too far and had to be removed. I had loads of stuff in there that, even when I decided it was going to be rectangles, there were massive smoke particle effects and a bunch of stuff, but everything I added into the game, I very soon realized I had to remove. It was really a case of just constantly throwing stuff that I thought would be cool in, and then going, no, and pulling out. It almost felt like carving out a game. It felt like I was trying to get to the nub of it, and with Thomas Was Alone, and I think I did. I think I'm really proud of that aesthetic, because there's nothing you can remove from it. It feels really, really pulled back in a way that I'm really proud of.
Yeah, it should be. I really enjoyed
Thank
it.
Thank you.
So yeah, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And I hope you have a good rest of the conference.
Thank you.
Thank
Cheers.
you.